Why is it that the wrong Sears had a big game last night against Alabama?
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back into Locked On Bama, HSA's radio network. Luke Robinson, that's me. Bama Online's Jimmy Stein, that's him. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. We'll talk about FanDuel in just a bit. Thank you, everydayers, for being here every day, and thank you, newbies, for being here today. Also, quick shout out to Avery from the Armor House. I went there and ate the other night. He came out of nowhere. He works there, and he said, listen to your show all the time, and appreciate you. Also, one of my in-laws' neighbors, under very strange circumstances, said he watches the show all the time, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on. Jimmy, it's not typical we lead off with basketball. We know what the public wants. They want football. We love football too. We also love basketball. And I think last night, even though I didn't think we'd be leading with Alabama LSU because should have been a blowout, a lot of questions from last night. And full disclosure, I will explain later, I didn't get to go to the game like I thought I would, and I didn't get to watch most of the game. I've tried to catch up best I can, but I know Jimmy was there, and so he may have a better perspective.
Well, I think, there was an anticipation that it would be a blowout. It would be like the Vanderbilt game, and it didn't happen. I think, a couple things. Number one, it's just sports. I mean, everybody's good, right? I mean, LSU's good. You might look at the record and go, they're not very good. Of course they're good. It's LSU. I mean, they recruit extremely talented players, and on any given night, they can play really well. I do think that LSU, even in their loss, I doubt they'll admit this or talk about it, but LSU, I believe, played really well for LSU. So that's one thing. Secondly, it's hard to maintain your intensity, I think, when you're a big favorite and bigger games are coming up. We talked about how this was kind of a two-game breather for Alabama. I think they literally took a breather last night, or at least in the first half. And boy, Nate Oats got really frustrated with it. I think Nate Oats was more frustrated with the team than I've seen him. But keep in mind about how Nate Oats has been completely Nick Sabanized. Good is not good enough for him. Great isn't great enough for him. I think he realizes, hey, I've got a team that can win a national championship. So I'm going to pull all the strings and do everything I've got to do to reach this team and get them playing to their fullest potential so we can win this whole thing. And that's why he benched Mark Sears in the second half. Apparently, listening to what Nate said and reading between the lines, Nate was very frustrated with Mark Sears and his lack of defense in the first half, per Nate. And he said, I put the team on the floor in the second half. It gave us the best chance to win the game, which is a shot across the bow at Mark. And hopefully Mark responds in the right way. And I have every confidence that he will, because in addition to being a great player, Mark Sears is also a great person and a great teammate. He wouldn't have come back and played otherwise.
Yeah, and that is the thing, right? This yet another kind of turning point for this team. It feels like this team's had a few of those. I mean, when Wrightsville got hurt, obviously I think the Ole Miss loss was one of those things that you think, okay, maybe this is the turning point. When Mark Sears scored 0 points against Illinois way back when. And now I think we're at another one. And this team has had a lot of twists and turns. And it comes back to something I spoke to a friend of mine who's very well connected to the basketball program. He's not with the athletic program in any capacity, but he has several great contacts. And he just made mention to me, and I don't think he meant it in any kind of, clandestine way that maybe, hey, this is sort of a double meaning here. But he said, one of the biggest leaders on this team is Chris Youngblood. And probably the second leader on this team is Houston Malette. Those are the two people that, at least according to this particular contact of mine, who has no reason to lie and who is very well connected, just trust me on it. My sources trust me, bro. But when those two guys are your leaders, it's good. It's fine. I love having anybody be a leader. Great. But here's Sears, who's been here forever, from Alabama, by the way, comes back to Alabama, is the current leading active score in NCAA, period. He's going to go down as a legend in Alabama lore, regardless of what happens the rest of this year. And he's not considered the leader. Maybe it's telling, maybe it's not. I hate to be here. I mean, anybody can say that, right? But I'm more concerned about that than not concerned, especially after last night. Now, what I would say about that is, okay, then here's his opportunity. Homer Simpson once said, Lisa Simpson once told Homer, the Chinese have the same word for crisis as they do for opportunity. And Homer Simpson said, you're right, crisis-opportunity. And this is a crisis-opportunity for Mark Sears to begin to take over this team, make it be his team again. We thought it was coming anyway. We were just bragging. Jimmy, I've done a short by myself. I've done all this stuff saying, hey, Mark Sears is still leading the league in scoring. He had a goose egg against Illinois, still leading the league. That's incredible. And then he has another goose egg. What if you had said at the beginning of the season, hey, guess what? What's the over-under on goose eggs for Mark Sears?
One.
If you did anything but take the under, no matter the number, you're crazy.
Yeah, if it was one, I'd have taken the under, and now it's happened twice. I mentioned Saban earlier and comparing Nate Oats to Saban. Here's one of, we can obviously do 1,000 shows on this, what made the Nick Saban era work, what made it so spectacular. Here's one of those reasons. Nick Saban several times, not every year, but many years, the best players on the team were the leaders. That happened all the time under Nick, and that can't be by luck. I'm sure it was by design and how Nick Saban recruited, but so many times under Nick, the best players on the team were also the leaders. They were the ones that set the tone, and that's just ideal, and that's what Alabama is, and I'm not going to say handicapped with, but I think it gets to your point that it would be more ideal if Mark Sears was the leader of this team because he's the best player, and he's the natural leader, even though there's multiple seniors on the team. Even Grant Nelson would actually be an ideal leader, and I get the feeling he's not, though I never question how hard Grant Nelson plays. Sometimes he just doesn't play great, but he does play hard. I think Nate Oats questions how hard Mark Sears plays on defense at times, and it seemed like last year in the Final Four run, Luke, Nate spent a lot of time stressing, even publicly, that Mark Sears had to play better defense last year. And I think he started this year at times, improved on defense. One final point I'd like to make, although I'm not going to, the next basketball game I coach will be my first. But I do think some get confused and think that defense is 100% effort. Well, there's two things to that. Number one, that is true. You can only play what's required of you defensively if you're giving 100% effort. That's true. But what some don't realize is defense is also a skill. It's a gift. It's a talent. And some people can play at 100% effort, but they're still not great defenders just because of their limits on athleticism or their limits on length. Herb Jones is one of the best defenders in the entire world in basketball today. Any level, Herb Jones is a great defender. It's not because Herb plays harder than everyone else. He's just gifted. He has incredible length for the position he plays. He has just great defensive skill. There is a skill level to play in defense. It's not just 100% effort.
Yeah, that's 100%. And again, this is a golden opportunity. I hate to be all Dubosian, but this is a golden opportunity for Mark Sears to hit the reset button. I mean, he can still be the best player in this league, if not one of the best players in the country. I mean, he's just, I don't know. I was concerned about the body language. The next round had a tweet with video of him talking to Preston Murphy as the game was going on. It was like he wasn't even looking at the game. It was concerning. And again, this might be this could be one of those moments where you go, hey, this is where that team turned the corner and started kicking chicken. This could be one of those moments where you go, this is where things fell apart. And I am kind of happy we go play a very good, not great Mississippi State team on the road Wednesday night, because I feel like this is one of those at Kentucky moments post Ole Miss where, hey, no, you don't have the comfort and the luxury and the warm, comforting glow of the blanket of Coleman Coliseum being at home. You have to go on the road to turn this puppy around. It's like when Rocky said, we're going to fight Drago in Russia. He said, it doesn't do me any good to win it here. I got to go win it there. That's what's going to make the statement. And I think that's what's going to have to happen on Wednesday night. We're going to continue this basketball discussion and just talk about the game in just a second. But I got to tell you about TurboTax. It's tax season, y'all. Y'all know it is. You better know. If you don't know, better get with it. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back. I don't know what that sentence means, but I just read it just like it is. And then the waiting and the wondering and the worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with TurboTax Expert, who can do your taxes as soon as today. Okay? An expert who gives you your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back. That's the key. Get the most money back. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. This is the new way to do taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates, only an iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantee. So going back to the game here just for a second, do think it's crucial. We're coming down the stretch, by the way, so I think we will get into more basketball coverage on the front end because we're also in that window before spring practice. I want everybody to still be here. I've had several people tell me, hey, we love it when you talk football. I don't listen as much to basketball. But please pay attention. This team deserves it. Let me go on another rant one more time because people are beginning to back me up. They used to kill me. I can't stand our home crowd. Tired of it. I'm tired of it. I mean, I didn't get to, again, just full disclosure, my father-in-law passed away very suddenly yesterday on the couch, heart attack, 74 years old, god-awful situation. Obviously spent a lot of time over there and didn't get to go to the game. Horrible, horrible, horrible. And he was a diehard Auburn fan. So I thought it was very sweet last night. My 8-year-old daughter, who is as big Alabama fan as I am, but last night after we told her the news, and Alabama won, she said, turn it to the Auburn game, Daddy. And so I did. And it was very close between Auburn and Tennessee. And she said, Dad, I don't want you to be mad, but I'm going to pull for Auburn tonight for Granddad. And I said, War Eagle, honey. I said, that's fine. And I just thought that was so sweet. So I just want to say that, War Eagle, Ed, you'll be missed. But I couldn't go, all those things. But I did get to see the very end of the game. And when I finally got home, and it wasn't a blowout. We were up 5 when I got home. And the crowd was this. For those listening on audio, I'm crossing my arms, sort of got my shoulders in a stressed position. Guys, when you are at the Alabama basketball game, please, I beg you, put a little oomph into it. We can't just keep going there in sweater vests and acting like we're watching a play we don't want to see. This is a basketball game. They need more of our support. I know LSU is not very good. I know we were 17.5-point favorites. I'm not trying to lecture anybody. Do what you want to do. But if you don't look around the country and see some of these other places have more enthusiastic fan bases with worse teams, this team deserves more love. I'm asking you politely and kindly for it. Let's uncross our legs, uncross our arms, and give a few more fist bumps. Fair?
Fair to me.
You were there. You tell me, Jimmy. What do you did it just not come through on TV?
A little bit that way. A little bit. First of all, prayers to your family and Krista. It's just absolutely tragic what happened. Just Godspeed through this. I know it's really a difficult situation. Appreciate you doing the show today. We didn't have to do a show today, but Luke wanted to do a show today. And so we'll just be thinking about you all week. The crowd, first of all, the crowd was big. It was big. I mean, it's obviously a Saturday in Tuscaloosa and the team's good. So expect it to be big. It was a big crowd. It was just very crowded everywhere. I mean, there weren't many empty seats all the way up to the top. I agree with Luke totally that it was not a loud crowd. It wasn't a fired up crowd. I think some of it was that the game wasn't going great. I think LSU got off to like a 7-2 start or 9-2, and it just never really felt like the team was in it. It was 40-40 at the half. I think the crowd was a little stunned. I think what Luke is saying, 100% true, that maybe the crowd should take it upon themselves when the team needs it. The home crowd advantage is something that can lift the team when they need it. And it seems like our crowd is a little more like, hey, you got to give us something to cheer about, and then we'll get loud. But I will say this in defense of the crowd that I was such a extremely small part of last night. I do think, Luke, had it been 72-72 with 2 minutes left and it was like do or die time, it would have been loud. I do think the crowd was willing. I think it's a willing crowd, but it is one that's slow to give the advantage to the team as they should. And I would agree with that. But to be honest, when I was there, I've read some criticism of the crowd and heard what you just said and read a couple of texts about it. When I was there, it didn't strike me as dead. I guess just partly because it's so crowded. Literally, I mean, the parking lot is just, because there's construction going on, and that's an issue. But it was a very crowded game, and definitely Alabama fans showed up for sure.
I did feel like a lot of people were there. There is also something, and again, for fear of taking out, some recent frustration on anybody listening that went to the game is like, who are you to tell me how to cheer? I hate the way our Coliseum is set up with the press stuff very visible during a game because of where the camera is. And it looks like that's sort of an empty section when really what it is just some room for the press people. And it kind of looks like I don't know. It looks like somewhere you go to exchange stuff for Amazon at Whole Foods. I mean, it doesn't look like a regular spot. We need to change up our configuration maybe. But back to the game. I'll say this. I'd said it in the first segment that I thought, hey, Chris Youngblood, from what I could tell, again, I was just trying to follow the game on the ESPN app. Chris Youngblood sort of kept us in it at the very beginning, right, Jimmy?
He did. He got off to a good start. He got his first start because LeBaron Philon had been a little gimped up, and I think that's one more thing about last night. I'm sure it had nothing to do with the basketball team. The gymnastics team had a terrible virus all week, and it really affected their ability to practice all week long. And I'm not saying that's what happened to the basketball team, but clearly there's some sickness going around. LeBaron Philon didn't start the game. He also didn't do much during the game, but Chris Youngblood did, and he was excited to get the start. And I think it was 40-40 at the half in large part because of Chris Youngblood. I think Chris sort of kept us in the game a little bit early. But, one of my takes from the game was this, is it seems like this team, Luke, the reason they've been great and they're ranked where they're ranked is because the team is so deep with dudes that almost inevitably on some nights, one or two guys are having a good night. One or two guys, whoever they are, it can be random, but one or two guys sort of leads the team and they're the reason we won the game. And there's an obvious hard hat winner type thing. I didn't see that last night. I don't think that anyone in particular stepped up and made sure we weren't going to lose this game. I just thought it was a little non-great across the board. But you make a good point about Chris Youngblood. His performance in the first half kept Alabama in the game, and then the defensive effort in the second half, which Nate Oats demanded, they did come through. And let's acknowledge that Nate himself was very pleased with the way the team played defense in the second half.
Darian Reed was out again, beginning to get a little more concerned about us 4 games in a row.
Yeah, hopefully I think they're just being super cautious. What you're trying to do is, I know this is what's going on with Sarah Ashley Barker and the women's team too. There comes a point when you can play. Like, okay, well, they can play and they'd be close to 100%. But the type of injury is, if you don't allow it enough rest, now you've got a thing that's going to linger all the way through March and into the postseason. You're better off getting it just healed. And that's what's going on, I think, with Barker on the women's side. And I think Darion Reed, I think they're being cautious, because what you don't want is, hey, that we're still talking about, hey, we're going to the SEC tournament. We're still worried about at what percentage Darion Reed's health is. I think they're just being cautious.
Okay, I can live with that. And again, going back to the Mark Sears thing, that's going to be something we just got to watch all week and see what happens. But we come back, we're going to talk a little football. But I want to tell you about FanDuel right now. Of course, Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win 200 smacks and bonus bets for the Super Bowl, it's icing on the cake, bruh. Download the app and head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5. And if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner sportsbook of Super Bowl 59. Super Bowl 59. That's how old I am. I mean, I remember like Super Bowl 20. I mean,
it's crazy to me that the Super Bowl hadn't been around so long. You know, I'm a big baseball fan. Baseball's starting up fairly soon. Hey, how about Alabama softball plays their first game like in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. But
I know, and I've told people I met Pat Murphy back at the Wisconsin game. I got to get him on the show. Got to get him
on time. He's about to get pretty busy.
Yeah. So Jimmy, football wise, it's going to be a big weekend coming up on the 1st. Auburn had their big junior day this past week, and a lot of the dudes that went to their junior day are going to go to Bama's junior day. I think E.J. Crowell, Cedarian Morgan, Tristan Keys, people like that. So it's going to be super imperative Alabama make a huge impact this week.
It really is. It's a really big day for it. It's kind of, I would call it the first step in building the class. One of the advantages you get, Luke, when you're bringing in not just a bunch of guys, but the guys that are important to you, your high priority guys, your A-list guys, these are the guys we would like to have in this class, is you bring them all to campus at the same time, and you hope that there's a chemistry that grows, that they hit it off between themselves and develop some close friendships and identify each other as, hey, this is my Alabama buddy. I think he's going to go to Alabama. I would like to play with him. That sort of stuff happens at stuff like this. You're trying to build some chemistry within the group, because the peer group are great recruiters, not just the coaches, not just the current players on the team, but your peer group, the guys in your class you're being recruited with. So it's big for that reason. But again, I want to stress that this is not an event. It's not like a game in the fall where you issue 300 tickets to all these guys, over half of whom you're never going to really recruit or offer when it comes down to the end or crunch time. These are guys coming next Saturday, Luke, that for the most part, these are guys Alabama wants, or guys Alabama is seriously considering making a push for. So it is a big weekend in that sense, and we'll see what happens in terms of whether there'll be early commits. Maybe, but people shouldn't focus on that. Just look at 1 year ago. A lot of fans, and this is typical, this happened even during Saban, that February, March, and April, fans get a little frustrated that there's not more commitments. And that was happening a year ago. And then in what happened? June and July, as we predicted, and as I'm going to predict again, it's going to be June and July under the staff when you get the avalanche of big-time kids. And you just have to be patient until then and realize that even if some of these targets commit somewhere else, it's not over. It's 2025. It's not over until, well, frankly, it's never over, because you can recruit them after they sign. but don't just because a kid's committed somewhere else, that doesn't mean that they're not going to sign with Alabama. I mean, we could go on and on about all the examples of great players at Alabama that were initially committed somewhere else, even a Bryce Young.
Yeah, and look, Vodney Cleveland's already committed and decommitted, and I mean there've been other folks that are gonna. It's just going to be that way, and recruiting, just following recruiting, is so abnormal right now. It's going to take a lot of getting used to. Anything else in the football arena that you can discuss?
Well, we're getting very, very close to spring practice. A-Day was announced as April 12th. The start of spring practice has not been officially announced, but we're guessing, we believe, even based on when A-Day is, it will be March 3rd.
Talk about that big day, April 12th, really quickly, because you said that is just a monster weekend.
Yeah, it really is. April 12th in Tuscaloosa. Make your plans to be here to go to any number of events, because at the same time you have an incredibly intriguing A-Day because of the quarterback situation. Ty, that'll be Keelan Russell's debut in front of a huge Alabama crowd. And, of course, Ty Simpson. In addition to A-Day, the baseball team is hosting Mississippi State, which is a huge series every year because Mississippi State is an annual superpower. But not only that, Mississippi State brings a lot of fans because it's so close down McFarland. You just drive to McFarland, and eventually you get to Mississippi State. There'll be a lot of Mississippi State fans here for that. Softball is playing the dynasty, Oklahoma, the Oklahoma Sooner softball team. I think they've won 2 of the last 3 3 in a row. They've won 3 national titles in a row in softball. They're coming to Tuscaloosa that weekend. Alabama softball versus Oklahoma. I know a little tiny golf tournament up the road in Georgia, the Masters, is also that weekend. A lot of sports fans stay glued to their TVs, or if you're not lucky enough to go to Augusta National. So the Masters, big baseball series, huge softball series. Oh, and A-Day, all in the same weekend, April 12th.
And don't forget, it'll be Alabama basketball national championship parade.
Could be. I love the optimism there, and that is very possible. And if there is a national championship basketball parade, what a day to do it, and what a day to guarantee that April 12th looks like the Alabama-Georgia football game in terms of the crowd that will be in town for all that stuff.
Oh, that would be a thing now. I mean, I would be downtown. All right, so that's going to do it for today's podcast. We will be back tomorrow with more. Appreciate you guys hanging with us, and we will be back tomorrow. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.